Hey guys, hello and welcome to Total Health Live with Dr. Sedano. I am Dr. Nick Sedano and I am so happy you're here today. This is going to be a great day because we've got some incredibly valuable information that's going to be the #1 strategy you must know to heal ADD and ADHD. And this is the biggest one of them all. This is the granddaddy. And so this is the one that's going to really make the changes to the actual brain itself based on the science. And if you guys have heard this, let me know. Type into the comment bar down there, the science of neuroplasticity. This is really what makes the lasting changes and the permanent changes in you or your child's brain. And if you guys are tuning in for the first time, like I said, I'm Dr. Nick Sedano. I'm glad to be here, and I like to think I'm your truth detector. So we give you the voice of truth when it comes to health. And I like to take the complicated health topics and make them very simple. So if you guys are just chiming in for the first time, go ahead and if you have any comments, let me know. I'm just going to make sure that my phone is connected so I could see your questions. That's it. Turn my volume off here and I can see whatever you guys are saying on the other side there. So once again, I'm glad you're here. So if you saw my previous show, what we talked about was basically some of the top strategies to reverse and to heal ADHD. We talked about really the devastation of ADHD and ADD and really what it can do, everything from higher divorce rates to higher rates of car accidents to children not graduating from high school to divorce rates and separation rates going through the roof. And really one of the most important things I saw that we talked about was the incarceration much higher with ADD children. And the other thing we talked about was just how dangerous these medications are. A lot of these drugs are your psychotropic drugs, and we see in our country between 6 to 7 million children on these type of psychotropic drugs, and these are extremely dangerous. We talked about the fact that they have black box warning labels, which are the highest warning that the FDA can give on any type of medication, and it is extremely dangerous. Everything from homicidal ideation to suicide. So these are very, very powerful drugs. Sometimes they can even cause myocardial infarction, heart arrhythmias, heart swelling, sudden death. I mean, this is nasty stuff. So we want to do everything we can to get our children off of these types of medications because the reality, guys, is this. If you put your children on these medications, they are set up for future medications down the road. These are gateway drugs that will lead your child down the path of possibly experimenting with other drugs. And the last thing we said, too, is that we didn't want our children thinking that they needed to be on these type of drugs to be whole, to be functional. We want our children knowing that God created them whole, created them great, and they've got all the tools inside to already be great and be highly successful. And that counts for us adults, too. We don't want a child ever thinking that they need some kind of pill or a shot or some type of potion or lotion to really make it and be successful in life. That's the wrong message we want to send. So we started talking about foods that we can eat. We talked about water and how important that was. We talked about how the brain is made up of water and fatty acids. So we went heavily into the types of fats to eat and the right type of water to eat. We went into the types of foods, your antioxidants, your green leafy vegetables, the ones with the highest ANDI score, ANDI, which means Aggregate Nutrient Density Index. We talked about the types of vitamin E to use. We talked about the types of berries to use for their antioxidant properties. And then we got into the types of food that cause inflammation to the brain. So things like your corn, your wheat. We talked about food colorings and dyes and preservatives and artificial sweeteners. We talked about the wrong meats and the wrong oils to eat. All these things create problems in your brain and your child's brain and will lead to ADHD and ADD. So go back and review that last one. That's part 1 of this series, but this is the big one. This is the one that you want to make sure that you either like this, give it the heart, share it out, because there's a lot of people that you know that need this information, that people all over the country, all over the world are struggling and suffering with this, and they're not making it in school, they're not making it in their relationships, they're not making it in work, and they're not becoming as successful and everything that God created for them to be. So this is the big one, guys. And like I said, this is all based on neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is cutting-edge science. And before I get into that, I just want to say hello to some of you guys on the line, give you a little bit of shout out. I see my buddy Sean's on the phone here, not on the phone, but on the live. I see Valerie here. Kelly, welcome. Good to see you guys. Rick, good to see you. Haven't heard from you in a while. Good to see you, man. glad you guys are on, and hopefully this will be valuable information that you can use yourself and share on to others. But like I said, we want to talk about neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity really has to do with the brain's ability to remodel itself. You always hear the saying, you don't use it, you lose it, and it applies with the brain too. Not using parts of your brain, your body starts to prune that away. Your body doesn't use those parts, and it will start to trim those neural connections. But the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity is that your brain can also create new nerve connections, new neural pathways. And so you could actually repair parts of the brain that have been damaged, and that's how great this works. But this part here, this part we're going to be talking about today, is all based on brainwave dysregulation, where parts of your brain are actually shorting out. It's almost like a firestorm inside you or your child's brain to where the messages aren't communicating in the brain properly. Brainwave dysregulation. It says research demonstrates that normal brainwave patterns may become disrupted, resulting in a dysregulated brain causing neurological symptoms such as ADD or ADHD. So we're going to dive deep into that today. But, you know, a lot of times I've been in practice for 26 years now, and I see people, all walks of life, coming in. And one of the biggest things I see going on with our schools and our doctors is everybody wants to just diagnose ADD and ADHD based on presentation. They want to base it on a child's symptomatology. And that's really not the way to do it. You can have a child that's going on, maybe they've had a divorce in their household, and the child's acting up, or maybe they're getting bullied or something in school, and they're acting up. It doesn't mean that the child has true ADD or ADHD. They could be exposed to chemicals. They could have environmental chemicals or food colorings or dyes. I talked about on one of my last shows that my son, whenever he'd go to visit a friend of his, and he got a hold of maybe some kind of red dye or NutraSweet or aspartame, any of those different artificial sweeteners and colors, he would come back just bouncing off the walls, unruly, and actually very angry. But it wasn't his fault. It was what he was consuming. So we really don't want to base a diagnosis of someone has ADD or ADHD just on symptomatology, because what happens is it's based on purely observation, very subjective findings. The only way to know if you truly have the brainwave patterns or the disruption inside the brain that is indicative of ADD and ADHD is this. You want to test. The brain is the most complicated structure on planet Earth. It is made up of about 3 pounds of basically fat and water, but yet it does between 10 to 12 trillion bits of information every second. So your brain is receiving information from your body to the tune of 10 to 12 trillion bits every single second. I mean, that's the fastest supercomputer on the planet, and our little 3-pound brains do that every single second of the day. So this is a massive computer that we can't just mess with and just base things on just symptomatology and observation. It needs to be based on testing. So what we do in our office, hey Teresa, want to say hello to you too. Any of you guys, by the way, any questions? I'll keep an eye on it, see if we're have any questions coming on. I'll make sure we get them answered. If not, I'll be able to just kind of answer them later on, so keep an eye out for it. All right, so moving along. The gold standard that we all do in our office is called the QEEG brain scan, the quantitative electroencephalograph. Excuse me, I got a little tickle in my throat. So the QEEG brain scan, we do 12 sites on the brain. So we actually put a cap on the child's skull like this, or the adult. This happens to be adult size. Children's cap is typically yellow. And when we put that cap on, this actually measures the different brain waves coming out of the child's skull and the adult skull. It doesn't put any kind of electricity in. It's nothing, anything like that. It's very non-invasive. It's almost like as if you put a heart monitor here and you're measuring heart electrical conductivity. That's what we're measuring with this. We're not measuring anything but the brain waves. We're not putting electricity in. We're not taking anything out. It's extremely non-invasive. So what it's doing is it's measuring 12 sites on the brain, and some of them actually measure more, but the gold standard is the 12-site scan, and that's what we do in our office. The information is fed through the ribbon into the computer, and the computer runs all kinds of algorithms on the child's brain. We do this with their eyes closed, and then we also do it with their eyes open. We want to see how their brain is responding to when they're not receiving any stimulus whatsoever, and then we want to see how it's responding when they have some kind of stimulus. So this is the true test to see how the brain is doing. Then what we do is we're measuring the different brain waves. Now, excuse me, there's 4 main brain waves that we're looking at or we're mapping for. One is delta. Delta is the lowest. So think of your car as having gears. With your car that has gears, each gear is for a specific purpose. Your brain has the same thing. In the lower frequency, that's like your car being in first gear. I like to say this is a slower frequency between 1 to 3 hertz, but it doesn't mean the child is slow and it doesn't mean they're not intelligent. It just means the brain is in a slow mode, and when it's slow, it's going to sleep. So this is where we see typically deep sleep, that REM sleep. And that's appropriate for what that child needs at that moment. The next speed up is called theta, and theta is between 4 to 8 hertz. 4 to 8 hertz, that's kind of like when you're waking up or dozing off. It's that in and out sleep. So when the brain waves are in those patterns of that frequency in hertz, that's when a child is either just waking up or falling asleep. They're not fully awake, they're not fully asleep. They're kind of like in that mid-range. Oh, I think I might have had some peanuts or something earlier, and I'm getting a little particles in my throat here. This is live TV, guys. Anyway, the next one is alpha. Alpha is between 9 and 13 hertz. And alpha is the fun one. Alpha is the one you use when you meditate, so you're kind of like out of it, but really not. It's the one that you may be driving along in your car and get home and not even realize how you got there. You kind of zone out. If you guys can relate to that, hit yes in the little comment bar. You know, how many times you get home and you're like, well, I don't remember that trip. What was happening on that trip? I got home to my driveway and I don't remember any part of it. That's alpha. Alpha is when you're chilling out, relaxing. When you're at home, just listening to quiet music, maybe having a glass of wine or just kind of meditating or daydreaming. You're not asleep, but you're kind of zoned out. That's alpha. And the fastest one is beta. Beta is the one that you hopefully are using right now. I don't want to be putting you into this one. I want to put you into this one right now. So if you're listening attentively and really getting a lot out of this, you're in beta mode right now. And beta is between 14 to 30, 35 hertz. And that's your fast mode. Here's the problem, guys. Say, for example, you're trying to go to sleep at night and your brain is up in beta. You can't go to sleep. Your brain is spinning and spinning and spinning and you can't turn it off. How many of you guys can relate to that? Or what if you're sitting in a lecture or class and you're in delta, or actually theta, we'll say? Well, that's your ADD mode. So typically if a child is supposed to be listening attentively in class and instead what they're doing is they're just kind of daydreaming or nodding off, you're slipping into alpha theta. And so that's where we see the ADD type of presentation. Or if someone is in alpha all the time or stuck in that, they may be experiencing depression, withdrawal behaviors. Maybe they are kind of withdrawing from society. We see that a lot. Excuse me, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, the problem is this. Our brain should be able to switch from one gear to the other very quickly and very easily. It should be able to go from beta down to delta when it needs to, when it's appropriate. The problem, guys, is this. We start to see brain waves that get stuck in a certain pattern, or they're in a pattern that's not appropriate for what they need at that moment. Like I said, they might be down here in theta, and they're supposed to be in beta listening in class. Or they're supposed to be going to sleep, and they're stuck in beta. And when they're supposed to be winding their brain down, bringing it down to first gear. So that's the problem. And like I said, this is brainwave dysregulation. So when the brain waves are not functioning where they're supposed to, instead what they're doing is almost shorting out in a way. The brain is not working the way it's supposed to. So research demonstrates that normal brainwave patterns may become disrupted, resulting in a dysregulated brain, causing neurological symptoms. And each one of those categories, whether it be delta, theta, alpha, or beta, each one of those categories comes with a specific set of symptoms. So what we see is this. If you or your child is stuck in delta theta when it's not supposed to be there, you will see someone who's impulsive, maybe socially inappropriate, hyperactive, easily distracted. This is your ADD type of thing. Hyper-emotional, maybe disorganized, excessive speech. And you know what's interesting is when a child is down in this range and they're trying to bring them up to a higher range, maybe beta for listening in class, they'll start to give them drugs for this. So they give them a drug to move them up to speed up their brain. That's why when a child has ADD and ADHD, a lot of times what they're doing is giving them speed, kitty cocaine or something we call Ritalin to bring their brainwave patterns up. Hey Tricia, good to see you. Glad you're on today too. And I see that Andre is on. Hey Andre and Donna. Welcome you guys, glad you're here. The other thing we see with alpha is the one we see a lot with depression. We see a victim mentality, excessive self-concern, rumination. You're just going over things and over things in your mind. And if you have that, if you have these things where you tend to beat yourself up a lot, a lot of self-deprecation, anger issues, agitation, withdrawal behaviors. You might be stuck in alpha, so this may start to ring a bell for you. If you or your child has these type of symptoms, you can start to conclude they may have delta or theta dysregulation. If they have these type of symptoms, they may have alpha dysregulation. And then last but not least, when someone has beta dysregulation, that's when you see someone with the worry, the anxiety, the panic attacks, the insomnia. We see someone who just is very obsessive. They're always thinking through things. We see someone who dislikes change or is very restless, very fidgety and things like that. That's your typical beta presentation. So once again, guys, start to check this off and think about this either in your life or your family's life, your children, maybe even a spouse. We see a lot of times when a child comes in, the dad or the mom will say, hey, I know they get this from me. This is what I've got too, except I've just learned how to cope with it or cover it up. But when we start to see this type of symptomatology, you can start to get an idea maybe where you or your child is in or where you've got brainwave dysregulation. Hey Lou, welcome. Good to see you, my friend. Glad you're on the call today. So what we typically see with the ADHD presentations is this. We typically see in ADHD the dominant brain waves are the slow frequency brain waves, like I was saying earlier. So typically the brain waves known as delta theta are the ones that we see with the ADHD type symptomatology. Most ADHD medications are stimulants, like I said. So what they're doing is they're stimulating the brain. Most people don't realize things like Ritalin have almost identical molecular structure as cocaine does, and that's why we call it kiddie cocaine. I remember seeing a show on Dateline or Nightline many years ago where they were showing the girls in school, they would take their little makeup cases, the compact cases I guess you'd call it, with the mirror inside, and they would have their pills in there of Ritalin, and what they would do is take the back of the cigarette lighter and crush it up, and then it would have a little straw in there, and they would snort it. And what they're finding is that kids are using Ritalin just like they would cocaine because it's almost identical in molecular structure. And what happens too is the kids are actually selling their Ritalin to other kids for upwards of $20 a pill. So they've taken it to school, but they're not taking it. They're selling it off because it is so similar to cocaine, because what it does is trying to stimulate the brainwave activity up to beta so that way they can function. Now, other things kids do too that are less illegal are they might get Red Bull or Monster drinks or coffee, things like that, and that might stimulate their brain up. That's another remedy they use. But what we like to do for this is actually correct the cause, which is the brainwave dysregulation. We correct it through the process of neuroplasticity and the process of neuroplastic change. So we do brain core neurofeedback. So neurofeedback is a type of biofeedback. Okay? Research over the past years has demonstrated that inappropriate brainwave activity is at the core of many childhood disorders. So it's not the fact that they just want to act out, guys. It's the fact that our kids have damaged brain waves, have altered brain waves, and that's what's creating these different types of symptoms. Hey, Christy, welcome on the line. I'm glad you're here. Now, also neurofeedback training. So this is what we're going to get into now. How do we actually train these brain waves? How do we actually correct them? How do we take those dysregulated firestorm of brain waves and how do we then get them to work the way they're supposed to properly? It's all based on neurofeedback training. And like I said, neurofeedback is a type of biofeedback. The difference is that neurofeedback works directly by measuring and then correcting brainwave activity. It's based upon the principle that there's a normal pattern of brainwave activity that the brain regulates itself based on this pattern. So we want to get the brain back to its normal patterns, and I really believe that's what doctors are missing. Too many times all they're doing is observation. They're checking a child and saying, wow, he's fidgety, he's a little hyper, or he's zoning out, or she's doing this or that, and all they're doing is then throwing a pill at the child, not really knowing if it's coming from some type of other external source or if there really is this brainwave dysregulation. You have to test, guys. The only way to know accurately is to test, because if you don't test, you're guessing. It's total guessing. Let's see. All right. Now, neurofeedback training actually trains the brain to normalize the brain waves and make them flexible and adaptable to situational needs. So like I said, what ends up happening is, think about this. If you're taking a trip from here to LA, and I live in Atlanta, if I'm going from here to LA and I decide that there's a route that, change that. I used to go back to New York for breaks. I'm from New York, if you can't tell. And so what I used to do is travel up I-95. And I-95 was sorry guys, I don't want to offend anybody who goes up that way, but it's a boring route. There's a lot of tolls on it. There's a lot of big chunks of states you're going through, and it seems like forever. You're just going forever up these coasts. You start going through the Carolinas, and it's like 4 hours per state. One day somebody said to me, hey, you know what? Travel up through, straight up into like the mountains and cut across Pennsylvania and then cut into New York. Well, that was a lot more scenic. It seemed like I was cutting through shorter parts of the states, and you know, it's a mind thing, but you feel like you're actually getting somewhere. Well, that's made a much better route for me. So what I did is I started taking that route all the time. So whenever I would go back to New York for breaks while I was in school down here in Atlanta, I would take this other route, and it was so much better. And so I stopped using the other route. Well, your brain is the same way. What it does is it starts to realize that this neural connection or this neural pathway is not working well anymore, and it creates a new one, and it's all based on neuroplasticity. Your body will create new neural pathways or new nerve pathways based on what it needs to adapt, and that's really what this is all about. And the cool thing, guys, is this. It's not like a drug which just changes brainwave patterns for the moment or some type of other stimulant. It changes it permanently, and that's the great thing about neurofeedback training is it actually changes it permanently. And once again, I keep beating up on this, but this is cutting-edge neuroscience. It's all based on neuroplasticity. Your brain actually will rewire itself. So neuroplasticity, the brain has the ability to reorganize, creating new neural pathways as a way to adapt and optimize to meet our needs. So it literally connects new nerves together, and there is thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of miles of nerve connections inside your brain. We call those synapses, where brain cells come together, neurons come together, and then they fire a neurotransmitter across the gap, and then it sends it on to the next nerve. It's literally like it's just handing off a message, but it creates new neural pathways. So this is what the feedback training looks like. And we'll say hello to a couple of other people. I want to say hey to Pete. Thanks for joining us. And we have Donna on the line too, and Elaine. Thank you so much for chiming in, guys. Glad you're here. So this is what it looks like, guys. We have the doctor, myself, is sitting over here, or our technician sits over here, and we're watching their brainwave patterns on this monitor. They're hooked up. They have different kind of connections. They have sensors placed either on the front or the sides, temporal region, occipital region in the back here. Wherever we find the brainwave dysregulation is where we put the sensors. And once again, the sensors are reading their brainwaves that we're seeing here. We have ear clips on that creates a ground and more connections, and then those are fed into the computer, and the computer's reading their brainwaves, and based on then the protocols we plug into the computer, we can get their brain to start controlling what the computer is doing. And when their brainwaves are in the right, correct patterns, the video, or in this case, he's playing a puzzle, plays correctly. So I'm going to show you a demonstration of this now, and hopefully this will work out good. Let's see. All right, so this is actually one of our patients. She's hooked up to the machine. She's got sensors over here. It's a little tough to see from your angle there. And those are fed into the computer. Over here is her raw brain waves, okay? And that's what her brain is reading. She likes to watch, and the cool thing is, we always want the children or the adults doing something that they love to do. So if it's watching a movie, watching a DVD, getting on Minecraft. She actually likes to watch people play Minecraft. We have other patients who actually play Minecraft while they're doing it. We had one child, and she was the most amazing little girl. She had autism, and she used to love to watch, ready for this? She used to love to watch toilet bowls flushing. So we would put on YouTube, and we would look, do a search on toilet bowls flushing, and she would watch flush after flush after flush, and she would take the mouse and just keep hitting flush and flush and flush. But it worked for her, and that's what really kept her interest peaked. So we're going to show you how this works. I'm going to see, let's see if this will work for me. Yep, see? So her brain waves are reading, right? This is the threshold monitors and meters. So as her brain is being read, it's programming it into the computer, and the computer is reading whether her brain waves are in the right frequency or not. If they're not in the correct frequency, what it will end up doing is it will stop and actually go dim. And that's the neat way. The brain gets immediate feedback as to whether it's working properly based on the fact that the video will play properly or not. So what happens is when her brain is functioning properly in the right frequency, and we see these threshold monitors here, when it's in the right frequency, the video plays properly. When she's in the wrong frequency for a second, the video starts to go dim and the sound goes down. So the brain gets immediate feedback to start to figure out that it's in the wrong frequency. And what does it do? It starts to rewire itself. And guys, there's no way, I've done this myself, there's no way that you could sit there and do this. I used to sit there and try to recite back what the guy's saying on TV. There's no way that you can do it properly and get your brain to work by forcing it. You just have to sit there and let the brain do its thing. So the brain's working while she's playing, and it's really, really neat. So I want to talk about some specific cases. We've got a 13-year-old that we took care of here, and this is really an amazing case of ours because this child was actually, for many of you out there who know about this, hey Steve, welcome Steve, glad to see you're here. For many of you who have ever heard of, seen the commercials on TV of the Amen Clinic, it's one of the most renowned clinics in the country, if not the world, on brain science, and they referred us one of their patients. So we had a patient that they wanted us to look at and evaluate for ADD, but they wanted us to do it through neurofeedback. So Elaine came in, she's a 13-year-old diagnosed with ADD, mainly from anxiety. Now I want to touch on that really quickly, guys, because we talked about on this side, we had beta dysregulation and how it creates anxiety. Well, a lot of times patients will come into us and the parents are just, bent on the fact that this child has ADD. And what I have to then tell them is the ADD is coming from anxiety. So sometimes it's genuine ADD, and once again, how do we know that? Brainwave testing. We have to test and see what brainwaves are dysregulated. If they're dysregulated in the lower range over here, that is ADD. If they're dysregulated in the upper range, then it's more anxiety issue. And what we always tell our patients is this: if your brain is using so much of the brain real estate for cognitive function, for worry, for anxiety and things like that, you can't then focus on what's important. So how many times have you done this? You've got a lot of stress going on in your life. You've got a lot of maybe job deadlines or financial deadlines or whatever. And you notice that you're not making good decisions. You guys feel that? You guys know that? If you feel that, you're usually somewhat into an ADD mode because you're just kind of zoning out. You're just kind of going through the motions. But it's not coming from true ADD. It's coming from anxiety. So once again, the only way to know if it's an ADD or an anxiety creating an ADD-like symptom is by testing. And that's why we do the testing. So she was having a lot of anxiety. She started taking different supplements that were recommended to her, but she was having a lot of trouble. One of her biggest issues was interacting with groups. She felt very socially inappropriate or socially awkward. She didn't know how to interact with her friends, or if she got into another group or certain groups, she didn't know what to do. So it was creating a lot of stress and anxiety in her life. So when we did her brain scans, we started seeing that she had a tremendous amount of, or actually a little bit of all of them, but she had a large amount of dysregulation where she had alpha dysregulation, we had delta theta dysregulation, and she also had beta dysregulation. So these are what we call our global dysregulation meters. So when we do the tests and we give the patients a narrative, this is one of the narratives we give them. This is the first page, and this is a summary page of what's going on with them. And what we see here, this is what we call a global dysregulation. These are their primary sites of dysregulation that we're going to work on at first, and they will change. And this is a global site. And what that means is this. Global is kind of, think of it like if you're thinking of the weather across the United States. Well, in Atlanta right now, it's pretty nice and sunny out. It might be sunny all over the country, but there may be a pocket of rain in Houston, Texas. So we have a global weather pattern, and then we can have specific weather patterns. Well, what we see over here, this is a global pattern to the brain caused by a lot of different factors, or we can also see what we call focal site dysregulation. And focal site is based on specific parts of the brain that we know neurologically affect certain things. And you see this a lot of times. You might be watching one of these science shows on TV, and they may be doing a brain surgery where they can push on a part of the brain, and the patient can tell them what it's affecting. Oh, it's affecting my sense of smell, or it's affecting my sight, or it's affecting my fingers in these two fingers. So they can tell based on brain science what parts of the brain control what. So our computer system is so sophisticated that it can take all the algorithms of all their software findings and all their brain scan findings, put it in, and be able to tell if it's a global issue or if it's both global issue and a focal issue. Now, what's also interesting is when a patient comes in, they're also filling out a form where it's telling us on what we call the CEC, that's the Cognitive Emotional Checklist, that's what they're telling us they have problems with. We then compare it to what the brain scan shows. That's the second column. So over here you see it again, CEC, EEG, CEC, EEG, and so on. What we're looking for here, guys, is color matches. We're looking to see if it's a yellow to yellow or red to red or red to yellow. If we see color matches like that, we know it's a direct match that the patient also has not only a global problem, but they also might have focal site problems. Where a patient, we know, for example, in this case, verbal processing, she has a direct match. That means is her mom said there was an issue, and it's also an issue in her brain scan, where it's showing a specific site in the brain. Visual processing, same thing. Socially inappropriate, hyperactive, those are all direct matches with her. We see here a green to yellow. So this victim mentality is not coming from a part of her brain. That's what that's saying. We see over here, self-deprecation, agitation, all direct matches. So that's what we look for in our brain scan. Then when we actually do the brain scan, we're looking at the different points on the brain, the 12 sites of the brain, in delta, theta, alpha, and beta, and we're looking to see where she has issues. So over here we see a lot of red in her frontal area. Right in the front of her skull here, there's a lot of red. That means heightened activity in the beta range. And when you have that in the frontal area, that's going to increase worry. That's what's going to cause a lot of worry. Also here too, we see here in this picture, you're supposed to have a left and a right side of the brain. It should be all red on this side and all blue on this side. Over here, we see that she's only got 3 red and 2 blue. So what that's telling us is that her brain is doing a flip-flop from one side to the other. The left and right aren't working properly, so there's that miscommunication. And because of that, she's got that brainwave dysregulation once again in beta, and that's giving us the worry again. So that's what's giving her the anxiety, which is giving her the ADD symptoms. So once again, guys, the only way to know this is to test. You can't base this on observation. There's no way that a school guidance counselor or a teacher or a nurse in a school or your doctor would know this based on just symptomatology. They have to do a test, and that's what sets this type of work that we do apart from when just walking into a doctor's office and saying, hey, my kid's unruly, you got a drug for them. That's crazy. You can't do that. So over here we see in the second scan, this is with her eyes open now, and what we see is this. All this area here lit up even more. So as soon as she opens her eyes, guys, and this is what's key, parents will always tell me, man, as soon as they start to wake up and take on the day and get ready for school, my kid gets even worse. And that's what's happening here. In her alpha frequency, when her eyes open up, she gets all red and yellow. And if you can see here, all red and yellow is a much higher range. So she gets increased activity here. So this really creates a lot of chronic worry. It can create depression. It can create anxiety. It can create sleep deficits. And when you have sleep deficits, you're really not working too well the next day. And by the way, this is not new science. This has been around for a long time. Neurofeedback's been around for almost 50 years now, except it was done in a lot of the different university hospital settings because the doctors, like myself and other doctors couldn't afford the giant computers you needed to run all these algorithms, and the software was so expensive. So it's only now in the past maybe decade that doctors are actually using this in their offices. Let me get back to here. Hey, Becca, good to see you on the line too. And let's get to this now. So American Academy of Pediatrics listed neurofeedback as a level 1 intervention for ADHD. So what they're saying is this is as good or better than any medication. So why not go conservative, guys? So if your children are suffering with this or you are, don't take the medications for it once again, especially if they haven't done the testing. You have to do the testing to see what the brain scan is showing, and then you know the appropriate actions to take. But they're saying right here, the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying that, neurofeedback is a level 1 treatment for ADD. That means it is as good or better than a medication. So why take the medications when it's not working? Now, this is another case I wanted to go over quickly with you guys. This is a girl, Suzanne. She's 15 at the time she came into us. And why this case is so important is because this was a young girl with extreme anxiety. The anxiety was so high that she told her mother she wanted to commit suicide. So if all you parents on the phone, on the line right now, you know what we're talking about with this. Imagine your child comes to you and tells you that they don't want to live anymore, that they've been thinking suicidal thoughts. Well, when her mom came in my office with just tears coming down her face, you can imagine both of our hearts dropped. we needed to get her in immediately and start making changes to this. So as you can see, Suzanne came in depressed, anxious, tired, mood swings. Imagine this. And I don't know what she was thinking when she wrote this, but she also literally said she had heart pains. I mean, her heart hurt. I mean, as a parent, that's just got to make your heart hurt. No confidence. I mean, we all want our children to have good self-esteem and self-confidence. Imagine your child is telling you they're depressed and anxious and mood swings and their heart hurts. They have no confidence. And what are they doing then? They're eating a lot. So the risk of then putting on weight out of comfort eating and binge eating is going through the roof. We rate all of her symptoms on a scale of 1 to 10. Depression, 9. Anxious, 9. Mood swings, 7. Emotional issues, 10. Heart pains were rated at 9. No confidence, ready for this? 11. Off the charts, even higher. Not eating a lot, or eating 8. And just when we said, you know, how are these affecting your life? I mean, she wrote, bad, duh, that's why I'm doing this. I mean, that's a child just crying out for help. And as you guys know this, that's why we got to get this information out to people, because there's too many people that are just putting kids like this on an antidepressant. And when you put someone like this on an antidepressant, you're almost guaranteeing they're going to commit suicide. Because if you saw my last recording, my last live, go back and watch that one. We went over the list of the top 10 antidepressants that they're also using for ADD, and every single one of them carries a black box warning label that #1 side effect is suicide. And we wonder why kids kill themselves when they're screaming out for help. And what do? We put them on an antidepressant, which blunts their feelings. They don't have emotions anymore. And then the thought of killing themselves, that's pretty easy. I don't feel pain during that. And these are the same kids that can hurt other kids and feel no pain about it. It's called emotional blunting. They're like zombies, and they don't need to be on these antidepressants. In fact, in my opinion, the doctors, it's criminal for putting them on these type of antidepressants when they have these problems. Anyway, so back to this. Suzanne, this is her brain scan. So once again, I'm not going to go over all the details about what everything means, but we're looking at her primary sites of dysregulation again. Once again, these are her global meters, which means there's an overall pattern to her brain. And what we see here is this. Virtually no delta theta dysregulation, virtually no alpha dysregulation, but very high beta dysregulation. So because of the high beta dysregulation, what are we seeing with that? That high worry, that high anxiety, panic attacks, nervousness, restless. That's what was creating the anxiety to where she was feeling like her heart hurts. It was all based on the beta dysregulation. Then we look over here, I mean, off the charts here, decision-making, visual processing, impulsive, hyper-emotional, excessive self-concern, worry. I mean, all reds here. So when we get into actual brain scans, we see here lots of low brainwave activity in the bottom. So when we see the blue, light blue, so if you guys watching at home, you might not see what these colors are. We have light blue in the base of her skull here. That can be from a traumatic brain injury. It could be low dopamine levels, which create all kinds of fatigue and issues. But here, in this case, memory deficits, okay? Over here, frontal, once again, this side of her brain right here should all be red. Instead, it's all different colors. That is what's creating the worry and anxiety. So she's got beta dysregulation right here. That high beta is worry, anxiety, panic attacks, restlessness, and ADD type symptoms. Over here, when she opens her eyes, it gets worse, guys. Her brainwave patterns drop even lower, so she sinks when she opens her eyes. She wakes up to get going with the course of the day in the morning, and next thing you know, she just can't get it going. She's sinking even worse. Memory deficits here. She's crashing. Over here, we see a lot of red. All this red up in her brain here is worry and anxiety. And over here, we see all of a sudden drops again. This part here is all light blue. So reduced cognitive efficiency. So her brain just isn't even working right at that stage. Over here, we see once again, this is supposed to be all red, and once again, we see it turning blue. It's got virtually 4 blue and 1 red, creating worry and anxiety. So what I want to show you now, guys, is that we base how well a case is going on 3 things. We base it on their scores. So as they're watching the videos or as they're using their brain to control the videos during the neurofeedback sessions, which last about 40 minutes to about half an hour, every time they hit the right thresholds, guys, the scores go up. and it keeps tallying scores. That's one way we look at it. The second way we look at it is what we call symptom tracking. And this with Suzanne is the most critical and key thing, because we want to map their symptoms on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the worst and 0 being the best, or 1 being the best. So she came in here, and this is a little tough for you to read, but this is short-term memory issues, and you can see she started off as a 7, and she worked her way all the way down to the lowest score here. Over here, where she has lack of concentration and motivation, all the way down. So every time they come in, we give them a score. They're asked to score themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 for each individual symptom that they really want to work on. So there are 5 top symptoms that they want to work on. And so in this case, lack of concentration and lack of motivation, you could see it just dropping here like not too good of a stock chart. You don't want your stocks to drop down. Over here, we see the degree of anxiety and frequency of suicidal thoughts, guys, and this was the biggie. This is the biggest one in her case. You can see it plummets. So within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions, she's down at the baseline. She is literally 0 for suicidal thoughts. And I'm going to tell you something, we were all cheering. When we saw that, we were all cheering. And what her mom noticed was this. She wasn't getting texts all day. Mom, I want to be picked up. Mom, I want to get out of school. I don't feel good today. My heart hurts. Take me out of school. I have a headache. She wasn't getting those texts anymore. And when she was going through a difficult time, because there was still some bullying going on. In fact, the weirdest thing, there was some bullying going on from another school into her school. She was coping with it. Now, how valuable is that? That your child can cope with these type of stressful situations much better than they were before. And the same thing for yourself. You may be the type that you've got this high beta and it's just spinning and spinning in your head, and you can't go into job interviews well at all. You can't go into a presentation well at all. You're going crazy when it comes to just watching your kids. You're losing it. As my wife says, I'm losing my marbles. When that's going on, guys, you can't make good decisions. So as we started watching this suicidal thoughts drop and this frequency of anxiety drop, we knew we were on it. And you could see virtually it bottoms out. So that's what it's all about, guys. What I want to do now is take a moment just to show you a quick video. Hopefully this will play right. This is one of our patients.
Hi, I'm Ayana. When we brought Ayana into Dr. Nick to talk about Brainwave, my husband and I both felt that she had ADD. She had not been officially diagnosed, and we had seen her doctor. We talked to the doctor about her lack of focus, her concentration. She was having headaches, and they wanted to put her on medication, which is not what to do.
Yeah, I really don't like medicine. Then I had a lot of headaches, so I took Advil for them, but it just made my stomach hurt worse.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we hadn't done anything for it. As I mentioned before, we had spoken to the doctor, but drugs were not the route that we wanted to go. We had done that in the past with my husband, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I didn't like medicine at all.
So the results with BrainCore were almost instantaneous.
And this is Ayana doing a training there.
The very first week of doing this, her grades started to go up, her concentration improved, her focus in school. It was just amazing. I can't tell you what a difference it made. We also purchased the ADE equipment, and that was one of the best purchases we've ever made. It has impacted the entire family.
Yeah, that helped so much. Like, when I had to do homework, I, did it so much faster. And then, my grades went up so much by the end of the semester.
So I would absolutely recommend BrainCore.
Yeah, it helped me so much.
And there you have it, guys. You see what she's doing there, how she's training. So when she's doing her training, you were seeing how she had the sensors hooked up. She was watching the video, and you could see the video getting dimmer and lighter and darker. And really what that was as her brain waves were once again hitting the proper thresholds that we programmed in. So we did the testing. We knew which brain waves were dysregulated. We put the sensors on in the exact same positions to make the changes to those parts of the brains. And what we then did was we fed the information to the computer, and her brain was actually then working in coordination with the computer. When she was in the right brain waves, you saw the video playing brighter, and it was starting to go dimmer when she was in the wrong brain wave. So once again, guys, you have to test. You can't drug this. You have to know. And so then Patrick Duffy, I'm sorry, not Patrick Duffy, he's the guy from Dallas. Dr. Frank Duffy, pediatrician, neurologist at Harvard Medical School, said this: neurofeedback should play a major therapeutic role in many difficult areas. In my opinion, if medication had demonstrated such a wide spectrum of efficacy, it would be universally accepted and widely used. So those are the experts, guys. We've got to do the testing, and then we've got to actually fix the brain. And the great thing about how this works is it works based on neuroplasticity. So, we can't just keep changing things based on chemicals. We can't keep throwing chemicals at problems, guys. We can't keep trying to manipulate the body and the brain with chemicals. That's not a good fix to do. It makes you chemically dependent, and it doesn't actually fix the issues. What we need to do, guys, is actually retrain the brain, make new neural connections, and then you are making a permanent connection. And I see we've had some questions about this. Hey, Karen, welcome. Glad to see you're here. Becky, private message me. By the way, if you guys want more information on this, you can always email me. I'll put my email up in a moment, but I'll give it to you now. It's live@drsudano.com. That's live@drsudano.com. Or you can private message me if we're Facebook friends and all. Or you can email me. But the best way is, once again, live@drsudano.com. And guys, like I said, if this information is valuable and you're finding it that this is stuff that you needed to know about or your friends need to know about, please like and share it. Give it a thumbs up. Give it a heart, but most importantly, share it, because people need to see this. This is information that could potentially be life-changing, if not life-saving. And as we talked about with Suzanne, when a child comes in our office and they're suicidal, that's life-saving, and that's what it's all about. Can you imagine then, what it would be like if you or your child didn't have these issues? Can you imagine a child that was easier to work with, came home happy, didn't have the anxiety, or your spouse didn't have the anxiety, or just going to sleep? My office manager, one of the great things that she's gotten out of it in doing her neurofeedback training is she was sleeping maybe an hour a night. And if you guys can relate to that, you know what I'm talking about. You can't wake up and take on the next day with any kind of energy. You're half asleep going through the day, and she did a great job. She wasn't doing that, as she said, she puts on her Mary Poppins face and just goes right to work. But the reality is most people can't get away with that kind of sleep. They would be totally, totally crashing and burning. But if you can calm your brain down, start to get more brainwave activity in the right direction, and you could actually start getting your brain working properly, or your child's brain, what would that be worth to you? So guys, once again, if you want information about what we do in our office, you can contact me at live@drsudano.com. The test is to know. live@drsudano.com, or you can message me through Facebook, whatever you like. If you have questions also, you just type them in at the bottom there, your comments section, and I'll be more than happy to do whatever I can to answer them for you. Here's the information, live@drsudano.com. And once again, guys, I love and appreciate you for being here today. Please like and share it. There's people out there that need this information, and I hope we can get it to them, because it may be life-changing, and they will have you to thank. So I thank you for being here today. That's really all I got to say, unless there's any other questions. But I appreciate you guys being on the line, and keep an eye out. If you do like what we say and like what we do, there's also, I think, a little follow button there where you can be notified whenever we go on the air. So please go ahead and check that off, and that way you can get notifications. If not, you can go back and look at past stuff. We've done stuff on cancer, just all kinds of different health topics. So go back and look at some of our other stuff. But once again, guys, thanks for being on the line. I appreciate you. I love and appreciate you. Have a blessed day, and take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.